本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's February 25th, 2022, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio episode 464. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Patrick Klepek.
Hey.
Renata Price.
Hello, gamers.
And our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
Hello.
So obviously we're recording this the day that Russia has invaded Ukraine, and it's yet another one of those days where it feels at once very strange and very fortunate to be sitting comfortable and safe at home talking about video games. It is heartbreaking and scary to think about all the people whose homes and towns now lie in the path of a major war. Last night I was checking in with friends who have people in Kharkiv and sorry, I have the Polish pronunciation in my head, Lvov, but I know it's Lviv. And I know that many of us have friends in Ukraine, Russia, or the broader region who look upon these events with real and immediate dread. Not out of nationalism, but also out of an understanding of our common humanity and how nationalism and imperialism threaten that, and the shape and impact those forces have had in the region in the recent and more distant past. The thing I'd add for myself here is that I often see these topics discussed through the lens of U.S. hegemony, either in frames built to justify its perpetuation or in opposition to it. I think it is easy for those of us who are aware of the United States' violent policing of the post-World War II world, its viciousness in the war on terror, or its history regarding the whole sum of the Western Hemisphere south of the Rio Grande as a strategic backyard to be controlled from Washington. Those of us whose perspective has been shaped by that awareness can be very cynical, justifiably so, about the rhetoric from Western politicians and militarists when it comes to Russia and its own actions. But I'd also stress that this cuts across a lot of complicated history and politics that is immediate and familiar to people from Eastern Europe, and is much harder to parse from within a U.S. and Western European-oriented discourse. There's a temptation to turn this into another stage for familiar debates in our own political context, but I'd certainly suggest listening to voices from within the region about what they have to say about their experiences and their hopes and their fears, and learning from them what is most helpful and supportive for us to do right now. So that's all I got about that. I guess there is an angle of this where, because of where this is happening, there has been some activity in the video game space around this that, may be worth mentioning, both because it's some of it's odd in one case, and in another case is sort of in continuity with what we've seen from this developer before. Patrick, you mentioned that 11-bit sent out a press release earlier today.
I think it speaks to the fact that games, more than a lot of other mediums, are like universally global, and like the kinds of games you play can come from all sorts of different places in the way that feels less true for like the broader like media that people tend to consume, and like movies and music and things like that. It's not true of everybody, but I think video games itself broaden that out for a lot of people in a way that they're not always aware of, where you can like be a fan of Stalker and like unaware that, the sequel that I guess is not coming out later this year is coming from, being developed in Ukraine. And then you also have, 11-bit, developers of games like This War of Mine, sending out a statement. I'll just read it, I guess. Today, Russian military forces attacked the free country of Ukraine, our neighbors, as a Polish game studio and creators of the globally recognized anti-war game, This War of Mine, one that directly speaks about the suffering and misery of civilians who are affected by war. We'd like to hereby announce our company's statement. We stand against the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Just words would be empty without a meaningful act, though, and the timing is crucial, so the act is as follows. For the next 7 days, all profits from This War of Mine, all its DLCs, and all its stores and all platforms go to a special fund. A week from now, this money will be donated to the Ukrainian Red Cross to directly support victims of war in Ukraine. Now, this message resonate with everything you know about this war and how a war kills people, devastates their lives and homes. Let us, players and developers together, do everything we can to support the victims of war in Ukraine. Sincerely, all the people of 11-bit Studios. Hashtag fuck the war. Hashtag Ukraine. And that's in concert with the developers of Stalker 2, GSC Game World. I don't have the statement in front of me, but it's essentially a statement, similar in tone, a little more, obviously more personal given their location. But at the bottom is a series of numbers that we had to verify what they did. And then the conclusion that was drawn is that it's essentially a way for the Ukrainian government to allow outsiders to directly fund the Ukrainian military as they grapple with what's in front of them. So, it's a lot. And it's interesting the ways that it intersects with the games that we play and the studios that we follow, when these real world conflicts then, directly impact, you watch, as the attacks were starting last night, people fleeing Kiev, and it's like, okay, well then do these studios need to start figuring out ways to it's just, it's complicated.
Yeah. And I think it's certainly been a thing that, we've seen coming for ages, but I think for myself, I was certainly hoping that this would not happen, right? That in the end, this would prove to be, a bluff or a skirmish along, the frontier of that separatist region. But obviously today, every time you check the news, every time you check Twitter, you will see something else that's startling and horrible. And so that is just what today is. There's no easy way to make this transition. I think we've just Cado will have cut out about 3 minutes of us trying different versions to segue this podcast, because that is what today is. But we have also spent the last couple of days, and in Ren's case, the last week with From Software's Elden Ring, which seems to be getting almost universally rave reviews. Ren was very measured. And I would like to talk about Ren's experience of Elden Ring so far, which is unfortunate because I think Ren has had to have this conversation with me 3 times in the last couple days as we edited the piece. But nevertheless, here we go again. Before we do this, Ren's review is on the site right now. There's a whole if you really want the details of what Ren's take was on embargo day, check it out on the site.
But Ren, you didn't play 85 hours, and so I just don't know if
it's true. It's true. I'm a fake gamer girl. I did sleep when the Saints decreed. I did sleep. Following the will of the greater will, I did take a nap here or there, and so I only put about 25 hours into the game before
followed your own personal grace to the bed to sleep.
Just conked my shit right out, and I put about 27 hours in. I've beaten the first of the 5 major area bosses, right? I think it's a very good video game. I think it's excellent in a lot of ways. But I think it's a recontextualization of the series and not a redefinition. And I can say that I was hoping for a redefinition in a lot of ways.
That you would hope the open world would be the avenue through which what a FromSoft game is redefined?
Yeah, I was definitely hoping for that, because as it stands right now, the ways in which Elden Ring is shaped by space, right? These games have always been narratively light, right? You go in, you play, Rise, Tarnished, or Ashen One, or Chosen Undead. Here's your objective, go kill the dudes. And then the narrative actually comes in through lore entries and all of that stuff, right? And that leaves a lot of room for player narrativization. Building a character who you feel resonant with, and then being why does this character want to do this? Right? And then thinking that out. That's something that plenty of people do in playing Souls games, right? What Elden Ring has done with space is it has expanded that playing field for narrative play that you get to do as the player in a way that is extremely exciting to me, right? Being able to choose which region my character wants to engage with first is really cool, right? Moving through spaces in the open world is nice. but frictionless. And that's kind of my fundamental problem with Elden Ring, is that for all of the space they've given you to play around with builds, right? They've given you a lot more space to play with. In terms of like, it's easier to switch what weapon type you're using. It's easier to switch, there's a respec option the game gives you later on. There are all of these things that make the Souls like genre in some ways easier to engage with. Not easier in terms of like gameplay, but easier to like reckon with and find yourself within, right? And that's all great, but I cannot help but wish that the parts of the game that were not combat felt like a Souls game should feel, or felt like a Souls-born game traditionally feel. If that weird, messy, roughness was in the feeling of riding Torrent, was in the feeling of moving around at night. And instead, those things end up feeling kind of frictionless. And what could have been a design philosophy that left combat and actually goes further into, movement, and like, world design mostly stays within the combat systems and like your traditional like Souls levels.
So I played far less than Ren. I've played like 10-ish hours, I guess a little bit more if you count the Sam the Samurai, a part of our stream from this morning. I certainly grant you like that the open world part is frictionless, but would argue that it's certainly a purposeful choice to make it frictionless, in the sense that Souls games traditionally are tunnel vision, both in like you walk down a dressed up corridor and then you hit a brick wall and you are asked to go through that brick wall. Sometimes you'll have choices on which brick wall you'd like to walk up against, but like it's really, you're going forward, there's traps in front of you, figure out the traps, hit the brick wall. That's the skill check the game is deploying. Then you go forth. And there is just so few avenues to reduce that friction, that tension, because the game at all times is engaging with you at basically 100%. And I think what's fascinating about Elden Ring is that it essentially hands control over the tension to the player, where if you don't want to have an experience full of tension, full of engagement, you don't have to. If a certain encounter is no longer one that you even want to deal with, you can just leave. And it is not just in the sense that it is easy to click a button and then pull up Torrent your horse and you can ride off into a poison swamp. Although from what I understand, Torrent is very good at allowing you to skip past the poison swamps and not have to deal with them. But that you could just go somewhere else. You can do something else. And you are essentially unlimited options in your ability to do so. And so I think it's like, I have found, depending on the evening that I have played this, I am in a mood for like, I had a extremely frustrating time playing this last night, in which I thought, okay, finally there are a series of bosses in Limgrave, sort of the big, the first opening area, that I'm ready to take on. I want to sweep through those, and then I'm going to push forward on what it seems to be one of the critical paths in front of me. And it was like slamming my head into a brick wall. I was making absolutely zero progress. I'd go from one to the other and be like, is my build terrible? Do I just not have the wherewithal to play these games anymore? Like, are they slipping away from me? And I finally sort of just like centered myself. I was like, I could also go south. I have not explored south. There is a huge open area that I have just not even touched. And I just went there and then reduced that friction of encountering these bosses that I was either not prepared for, don't have the right build for. The servers are also offline, so I can't even like call in friends or strangers to help me. And then had a wonderful like last 90 minutes with the game that was about what is in that little tower? Like what's around like the bend there? Like what is this weird medallion that I've picked up, or a talisman that I can like use to enhance part of my build? And I really, really enjoyed the ability to run away from the friction. I think there's probably a world where you could marriage the two of these, in which like I don't think what I'm suggesting is that the open world has to be inherently frictionless. I think you can sense that this is From's like first real attempt at like big map. Like what do we put in it? And I think there are ways that they're that they could satisfy both things we're talking about, which is like an ability to control the pace of your experience in a game that is frequently aggressive, but that when you're outside of those like intense combat sequences, there's something equally interesting and engaging. And I would certainly grant you that part, at least in my experience so far, that part is not really there.
Yeah, I think it's not that I think that the open world doesn't throw enough challenges at you. I don't mean friction in the sense of like difficulty, right? I don't think that, you should be constantly under assault. It's more a sense of engaged play. And that's the problem that I have with Torrent, is that like engaged play isn't just about like, am I doing something difficult? It's about like, okay, what am I doing right now? And right when you're on Torrent, just like riding through the woods, you're just moving fast and nothing can fuck with you. And that's not a like, oh, I think the game's too easy problem. It is a like, I'm happy to run through the woods and nothing can fuck with me. But I want that to be a more considered experience, right?
It's just traversal.
It's just traversal, right?
Yeah.
And when I think about a game like this, when I think about what Elden Ring could be and echoes I see in certain areas, right, that do feel more engaged with the way you're moving through the world, I cannot help but wonder, like, it's an easy comparison to make, but like, I can't stop thinking about what happens when this game feels like 20% more like Dragon's Dogma, when it's just like a little bit more interested in the intricacies of traversal and like the feeling of preparation and engaging with things that aren't combat and that aren't traditional Souls NPCs, right? Like the crafting system, for example. Before a boss fight, I hunt for animals and I go to a place and I gather fireflies and I use them to make arrows that I then go and use my magical arrows in these boss fights, right? And that
Are the thin beast bones what you use to craft arrows? So so like that's like one of the most common currencies you get when you attack a harmless boar is like, aha, now thin beast bones into my satchel.
I love a thin beast bone. And like I was like not engaging with the hunting at all because it's like it's not super deep, but like the ritual of engagement is very different now, right? Before it's like, oh, I'll farm some souls and then buy some arrows for a fight. This is very different. It is intentional. It is engaged. It is like, okay, I have to go across this world to find this specific resource that only spawns in this one area. And like, so I can get ready for this fight. And that shit is the things that I'm interested in. That is the kind of open world friction that is not related to difficulty, right? Hunting animals isn't difficult, but it is a thing to do, right? It's a lack of like intentional verbs, right? Everything exists right now in this like means to an end format. And I wish that the open world felt like an end in and of itself, outside of discovery. Torrent is a means for discovery and a means for exploration. Torrent is not an end. The feeling of moving through the world is not an end. And like this game's gonna have a ton of Breath of the Wild.
I guess I would push back a little bit in that what Torrent allows you to do that you cannot do in a previous Souls game is like when I cross the bridge to head to the south, and in this game you do have a map, but markers fill in as you encounter major landmarks, and then you can find like map pieces that like fill in a little bit more of the geography detail.
Yes.
Like what I have come to love, and maybe this is something that is like less interesting as you get further into more regions of the game, and I'm clear where you fall on this as you've gotten much further past where I am, but the ability to just ride through the entire space, in which so much of like Souls games in the past is like, I cannot know what's around the corner until I fucking deal with those 7 skeletons that have been wrecking my shit for the last 30 minutes. And there's nothing I can do about that. There is no shortcut. There is no other way to like wrap my head around this space other than to deal with the challenge in front of me, go past it. And I have frequently found one of the most endearing parts of this world to be, I'm just going to hop on Torrent and I'm just going to ride for like 20 minutes. I am just going to just billow through this like seemingly endless space and like, gallop past, 20 giants that suddenly want to kill me for no particular reason, picking up random items along the way, and essentially like creating a mental map of the path I want to do going forward. Yeah,
I'm not anti-Torrent. Let me be really clear. But I think Torrent feels bad. Like I'm out here being like I'm pro Torrent. It's like the Breath of the Wild comparisons this game is going to get are like it's going to get a ton of Breath of the Wild comparisons. Like it's the natural comparison to make. The game uses sightline based like exploration, a mix of sightline and map based exploration. It uses the two in tandem with each other in ways that
even the markers you're putting down like on your map are like echoing, similar visual language of Breath of the Wild.
100%. And that's great. But the difference is, and this is like the struggle that I'm having, is that every single thing in Breath of the Wild feels like a thing that you are doing and like a system into and of itself. The horse in Breath of the Wild feels better than Torrent ever does because the horses in Breath of the Wild are slower. They're just a little bit slower. They're a little bit harder to control. They have a cantering pace, right? You have to like go through the steps of motion with them. Well,
they have personality.
Exactly. They have personality.
Torrent is just a car that looks like a horse.
Yeah, exactly. He's a car that looks like a horse, and he moves exactly the same way that you do, for the most part. He has a slightly wider turning radius, but when you point the stick in a direction, Torrent moves in the exact same way that you do.
You can double jump, so you have a little more leeway to awkwardly go up the geometry of a space where you're trying to find whatever shiny object is up there.
Yes.
Torrent could be a pair of go fast boots, and it wouldn't change anything.
Exactly. And that's the struggle that I have with Elden Ring, because to truly translate what makes Souls games, to me, feel excellent into an open world setting with all of these additional systems is that level of intentionality that goes into the game's combat, I feel like I should be able to engage with those other systems in that way. It shouldn't be a requirement, because it's never been a requirement in a Souls game. You can always theoretically level yourself up enough that you can just wreck a boss. Like that is in certain, like the early parts of a Souls game, that is an option. You can get super fucking buff and kill a dude. I went to the Southern Isle that Patrick was talking about a little bit ago, like 10 hours later than he did. And I rolled that place like it was fucking nothing. There was a boss there who theoretically would have been a problem. I punched him with the script of God 4 times and that motherfucker was down. He gone. And like, that's always been an option in these games, but you still have to intentionally engage in those systems. And I just wish there were more intentional systems to engage with in this game, because the potential here is fucking incredible. It is so good. And that is why I want to push it further and push criticism of it further, is because like, what FromSoft could do, what this development team could do with intentional design across everything, that idea is extremely fucking interesting to me. And I cannot help but see the echo of it in certain places in Elden Ring.
Here's a question. I feel like a lot of the entire genre, in a lot of ways, for the most part, ends up in places where the open world involves a lot of traversal or things that feel just like transit, right? Mm-hmm. Like I am just like cruising across the map to where the interesting thing is going to happen, where the like really like breathtaking moment is going to hit. Yeah,
the side quest is placed here, and I just need to get to the.
They don't always. So I would say like that's one fork it's gone off in, right? Which is like, we're going to seed the map with these little things, and you wander around and like, oh, I'm in the vicinity of like these three icons. I will go fuck around with them. But even ones that are a little bit less like taking straight from the Ubisoft model do still tend to end up in the space. And I sometimes wonder if it is also like whether the intent is perhaps to use traversal as a way of also controlling pacing. And like intensity in terms of what is being asked of the player, where like I'm kind of wondering, like, because I'm sure we're going to get to this in a minute, Ren, some of the things you talked about, like for when you've sort of broken cover and come to a really delicately like authored moment or experience, the game is breathtaking. And I do wonder if the valley a little bit of like the world and just moving around it emphasizes the peak of those sequences, like whether this was a design trade-off rather than a like miss on like utilizing an open world?
I think the difficulty is that, like, the way that I would put it is that it's less that Elden Ring failed. It's that they were bunting. Like, a thing that I tweeted recently was like, Elden Ring feels like it's bunting 70% of the time. But the 30% of the time they swing, holy shit, are they fucking swinging. And, like, honestly, I wish that the valleys were even lower. Not in terms of, like, game quality, but in terms of, like, vibe. But the way you get those lower vibe valleys is that you intentionally build things that give that feeling, right? Because, like, part of the thing with Torrent right now, Torrent's fast. Torrent's real quick. You can cut down a lot of traversal time, but it's hitting the fucking sprint button on that horse. And it makes it so that the world starts to feel a little bit less material to me. And, like, that's my main struggle, is that, like, yes, there is a way in which traversal creates a kind of pacing that makes those harder moments hit harder. And, like, I wish there was more of that. I wish that the contrast was bigger, right? I wish that the difference in, like, because, like, you know, like you said, when mentioning map markers, you can play this game like a checklist game. You can do that. You have that power. Once you get the map, there are not icons placed for you. But the thing about Limgrave is that Limgrave is filled with broken pillars and broken pieces of, like, structure, right? And those broken pieces of structure usually don't have anything. But a way to determine if a broken piece of structure actually has something is if you open your map and look if the broken structure is portrayed in the map, because the map is a pictographic representation of the world.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, if you see a mark on the map, it's like, okay, let me put a waypoint there. I'll go there. Great. That's a checklist game, but it's not surfacing it to you, right? The information isn't being surfaced in the same way, but you can still approach it through that, like, lens. And that's where my frustration
I had a sequence when in the network test where going along the beach in the opening area, I was riding along with Torrent and I looked at my map and it was marked with, hey, there's a cave back there. And I was like, the fuck you talking about, game? I didn't see no cave. And, you know, the character had gotten close enough for the game to be like, marked on your map. And then I loaded up, and then my discovery of that cave is not me discovering that cave. It's the game's, like, you know, area of effect radius saying, like, that's close enough. Cool. We're going to put that there so that, you know, the cave of Beachdom or whatever the name is called, like, is a place you can go interact with. And it's a meaningful place to interact with, as opposed to just a random set of stones. And so, like, there is a tension there between the game's, like, natural sense of discovery and wanting to make sure, or giving the player option to find things or not overlook things. Like, I think that's a real tension throughout this game that I think if you want to, like, take, like, a 30,000 foot view, is this game in general, and I don't know how much this speaks to, like, the choices they made in terms of what they do or didn't do in the open world, and including more of that friction and systems that you spoke to, but the popularity of these games, the fact that Elden Ring is going to become one of the biggest selling games of this year, the fact that tens of millions of people are going to descend upon this game at the time that we, this podcast goes out. I don't think you can separate some of the decisions they're making from the audience that is now consuming them. And it makes those choices interesting to me to then try and figure out, like, who are these aimed at? How are they aiming at it? Because, you know, every time these games come out, there's always a new discourse over difficulty and accessibility, and those are all needed and worthy discussions. And I think these games could go so much further in what they do. But I don't think you can make the argument that they aren't having a conversation with the audience as it broadens. And I think all of that stuff intersects with the kinds of things you're talking about, down to the fact that there's a map at all.
Yeah. I also think that, like, you know, part of that moment that you're describing is going down the beach and having an icon appear, right? The moment that's interesting for me is, like, the ways in which Torrent is so fast, or you can traverse through the world so quickly, you don't notice shit. Because, like,
yeah, I wouldn't have missed that cave if I was walking. But I do miss the cave because I'm
or you wouldn't miss that wave if you're, like, cantering, right? If there is, like, degrees of speed that, like, encourage exploration. Because right now, Torrent speed encourages traversal, but not exploration. And those are like two slightly different concepts to me that are like interrelated, that like gesture at something about this game. One thing I am interested though, you mentioned like accessibility and like the ease of, you know, a given FromSoft game, right? Patrick, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong here. I think that Elden Ring is on the surface more difficult. Like the bosses are like on average a little bit more difficult in like, we're talking about main bosses. The little bosses in the side areas, significantly less difficult. But FromSoft has done the interesting thing of giving players way, way more fucking tools to tip the scales in their direction during fights, including like changing your build. It's always been an option, right? But also like the ashes, the spirits you can summon, not in terms of like other players to cooperate with, but the ashes are like an essential tool in this game that
and work in conjunction with the summons, right? Like, is that a hey, would you like to have these 3 badass wolves wreck shop while you pelt the boss from a distance with your blue magic that I do constantly? But you can do both. You can have instances where you have 4, 5, 6 entities all ganging up on the same, you know, struggling boss at the bottom of a cave. If you want to go in that direction, none of it's required, but they give you the options. And we were having the discussion on the stream of like, you know, do you or do you not summon an NPC character when you face like a major boss? Like, is it personally you feel you should do? Obviously, you should do whatever you want, but like, you know, how often do you endeavor towards going in that direction? And then do we look at the summons, the spirit summons, these like little, you know, the 3 wolves, like the noble sorcerer, like the old guy with a wand, like these different ones you pick up as you go through the game. Did you get the jellyfish?
I did get the jellyfish.
Yeah, jellyfish. I don't know how useful that jellyfish is, but delightful little jellyfish.
Patrick, do you like status builds? Patrick, do you like status builds?
It's not usually my thing, but I'm trying different things this time. I really want to play differently at Elden Ring, so maybe
that jellyfish is guaranteed poison. Unlike anything, that jellyfish has a poison shot. It's very good at poison.
I'm going to upgrade that jellyfish when I have the resources to do so.
It's also really tanky, so you can like. That's the other like, and that's the key thing about like one of the ways in which the game has become easier is that like you can summon a guy who's really tanky, and the boss is going to focus on them, and you can stand 35
Such as your
feet
big
away.
boy that you have.
I have a big boy.
Can you please talk about your big boy?
I have a big boy who I got from killing a god. I may or may not have challenged an ancestral deity to a bit of a lark, a bit of a fun fight, and I did win that combat. And the ancestral deity was like, do you want one of my cool guys that you've been fighting for the last like 4 hours? And I was like, I would love one of your cool guys that I've been fighting for the last 4 hours. Look, these motherfuckers have the biggest goddamn bow that I've ever fucking seen. Like, we're talking like on the level of like the Anor Londo, like Black Knight archers who are like just like, yeah, who are just like fucking like, you're gone constantly if like one of them sees you, right? And so we spent like 5 hours in this fucking area getting 1 or 2 shot by these goddamn snipers. And then you fucking fight the boss and he's like, you have one of my guys now. I will give you one of my guys. In my heart of hearts, it is the boss like being like, I'm going to come with you now. Like, this is the form with which I am joining you.
The truest form of respect is to join your journey.
Yes. And like, that section whips because like it's all about learning how to hunt in this game and like how to like break down and stalk through an environment. So this ancestral deity being like, all right, I'm now going to take the form of one of these hunters and join you on your journey now that you've proven to me that you know how to hunt is like, that's the narrativization that I'm talking about. That is like fucking incredible. That is like FromSoft firing on all cylinders and firing on new cylinders. Like, that's the good shit where it's like they are understanding how level design and like combat design can be used as a tool for narrative in a way that like they've done it a little bit before, but this is an entirely new level that I fucking adore. But I have this big man. I have this big fucking man, and he's got this
big.
He's so big. He's 1.5 times my height, and I'm a tall lady. I am a tall lady in this video game. Zata is a very, like, she's a buff, tall lady. but this motherfucker is so much taller than her, and his bow is so big. And what my man does, is I get in the fight, and I'm chopping it up, and he is standing like 45 feet away with his big old bow and just being like, bop, 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 doing significant damage. And the best part is I also have the bow that he uses. And so there's one area, I was going through Castle Morn, the southern Isle of Morn. I'm going through this castle, right? And there are these guys in the distance, right? And they're standing around a pyre. And me and my guys, it's a guy summonable area. So I call my guy, and my guy shows up, and he and I just stand there with our bows, and I fucking aggro enemies, and then he finishes them off. And that felt so fucking good to just be like with my boy, aggroing enemies while he finished them off. I love my big man, and my big man is like essential for handling most boss fights, because like, Patrick, would you say that you're squishier in this game than previous like FromSoft games other than Sekiro? I think I feel significantly squishier than I did in Dark Souls 1, 2, 3, or even Bloodborne.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why I had like an existential crisis. Like when I was trying to fight these, I was like, do I just suck at this stuff now? Like, I have found myself up against a wall in a way in this game more frequently. Mm-hmm. Again, not in the open world, not even the small dungeons, but like when the big moments arrive, I feel like the game is more willing to pancake you in a way that I just am not fully ready for. Because you do need to. The game is essentially asking, look, if you want to do this by yourself, like God willing, like you can do what you want, but
luck. Go ahead.
Good fucking luck, and like we want you to engage with these systems because they're fun and they're interesting. And you should consider them part of your build. And it makes what is an interesting contrast to, even summoning, player characters into the world. You don't know what you're getting, right? Like you can't like make a request into the world. Like I would like X character. Frequently when I would dabble in the requesting of help, like this dipshit's not going to help me. Like this is terrible. Like can we just send you away and bring someone back in? And what's so fascinating about the spirit summons is, well, one, there's the layer that you mentioned briefly, which is that you cannot summon them all the time. You need to be, there are certain statues in the world that you don't need to be aware of, but they are physically there because there is a UI indicator in the corner that's like a little stone tablet goes off. It's like, hey, you can summon your buddies now. And that becomes like, part of like the canon of how you think your character like acts and role plays in the world, but then also functionally, like you can make specific requests of your characters. And so I think the way that like both plays into the narrative, like what you think your character, how they exist in the world, how they, in my opinion, I think your character is maybe slowly falling in love with this god, the way that you talk about them. Like I don't want to be presumptuous, but I do see a world where this could be a relationship. The way that you are back to back, arrowing the foes as they come down to you in this increasing pit of hell. But that new wrinkle that I think especially is in some ways almost poking at the traditional Souls player and their ego of I'm here, I'm going to do it alone. It's me. Like I'm the hero. Like I'm, and this is not all players. I think I'm so curious to see what the stat breakdown is, like how many people summon versus not summon, and like that versus like the traditional narrative of like how we talk about these games. But in Elden Ring, like they really press you to like, no, actually like introducing mobs and using that against these major enemy types, having help, working cooperatively, even if they are spirits you're summoning from some dark realm and then dismissing them. That's a major part of the act of play in this. And it would seem like a minor thing, but I actually think it's like a pretty major shift in how you move and act moment to moment in this game.
Well, I think the other thing is that like you mentioned like tailoring your little guys to your build. The early part of the game, I was using claws and using a bleed based build. I still do, right? Right now I'm using a Dex build, a Dex Faith build and I'm adding int in here or there. But my goal is to like basically use bleed for the entire early part of the game while I was getting my faith up to use a particular set of weapons. And I summoned these little imps who also do bleed damage.
I'm so mad that I didn't realize that was.
Yeah.
You know, these games always give you a set of items you can pick at the beginning. Most of them are just items in the world that you could just go buy at a shop. And then there's always like a couple that are either unique or you're getting seeded them early before you could find them. I don't know if you can find these little imps, but you can. You can fight them, and you can be deeply annoyed at fighting them. But having them on your side, I'm jealous. I'm not jealous enough to start 10 hours over, but I do want a wiki to come out that tells me where to find them.
They are little guys, and they just hit a bunch of times, and they just stack bleed. And when I'm stacking bleed with my claws, and my little guys are stacking bleed with their little knives that they wiggle around like this, it's fucking incredible. Like the first boss, like the first major boss of this game, with my little guys and me, all using bleed damage, we fucking shredded him. We just absolutely,
I want them so badly.
devastated the first like great lord or whatever by just like cutting his shit up. And like, it's great. It's stellar. It feels good. And like, that narrativization layer is such a big part of why I'm loving this game, and like why, in spite of everything, right? I write this whole thing that is like a bit critical of Elden Ring, right? That's my review is probably one of the more critical ones that exists, but like, in spite of that, I fucking love it. Like it is, I have never felt this much of a connection with a player character in a FromSoft game before. I know exactly who Zata is, and like that fucking owns. And like, I don't know. For all of my misgivings and like belief that Elden Ring could have been better and has a lot of untapped potential, I think that they've made something really fucking incredible. And that will only continue to probably become more incredible as I play through it, right? As you like learn the intricacies of how to explore this particular world. You know, realizing early on after talking to a friend that sightline design was not going to help me find everything, and that I can use the map basically to like act as a treasure map and be like, okay, cool, there's a mark on this map. I don't see anything. All my sight lines are like fucked up right now, right? But I can see this particular topographical feature that has been represented on this map. That means something. And
this
so
little forest. Why is there just this tiny little forest? Why are they even just mark that on the map? Like, so there's got to be be something over in that tiny little forest.
Or like not even just like a forest. Like, why is this one graveyard drawn on this map and no other graveyards are?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I go there and there's a thing there, and it's like, okay, cool. Realizing that has seriously helped my experience of the game, because for the first like 15 hours, like I was relying exclusively on like what I can see, and I missed a ton of shit. That was like a huge bummer for me when talking to like other journalists. And like now that I've understood how to play it, my relationship with the game is improving as it goes on, and I'm like finding cooler shit. Like I was just like, after we finished the stream today, I like took like 10 minutes and I beat that fucking boss that I was stuck on before the stream that I was showing to Patrick and Cado.
Yeah, well, the one where you introduced us to the boy.
To the boy. We took down that boss, and then I left that area and stumbled into this extremely cool place and a quest line that I thought I had screwed myself out of. And like, that's really exciting, is the fact that like, not exciting, but like that is a good sign to me, is that all of these NPCs that I thought I missed, I thought I had completely, like I thought I'd killed a major NPC and screwed myself out of a quest line by going to it in the wrong order. And instead, the quest still let me do it. And like, I think that they have definitely made Elden Ring a bit more forgiving about order of operations.
You kind of have to, given the
structure of it, yeah.
The structure, the sheer scale of it, right? Like even, you know, those games on a baseline are, you know, 25, 30 hour games, you know, on your first run through. Like this game is multiple times over that. Plus it lacks a lot of the linearity that they were able to kind of control the player's direction. I mean, there's some of that here, but they give up a lot of it in service of openness. And so it's interesting to hear that they also modified with whatever this game's version, you know, what they call quests.
Yeah. It seems a little bit gentler with the player, which I actually really appreciate. I still feel iffy about certain design choices that did exist in games like Sekiro 2. Specifically the choice to like, let you buy notes. Let you like buy notes from NPCs that are like, hey, there's shit over here. Which is like, that's super useful to have a note that's like, hey, there's shit over here. I just wish that it was like communicated in a more interesting way. Or a more
it's like
way.
it's like their concession to a quest log.
Exactly.
Without actually finding, because I think what's so interesting about Sekiro and Elden Ring is that I think there was a conversation when Sekiro came out. I remember talking about this with Austin. It was like, oh shit, they added a map. Oh man, is this like, are they fucking up? They added a map. It's just like a weird concession to people who just want a map in these games, and found a really interesting way to do a map that felt like it maintained the integrity of the game and their design goals. And it just felt like a From Software map. Like, oh, didn't know I needed this, and now I'd be fine if it was in all their games. And I appreciate that, like, those notes are a version of, do you need, I think for some players, a lack of direction is paralyzing. I've seen this like mentioned by some folks who have played the game that aren't already fans of Souls games, that are either playing this out of a obligation or just like interest in what is clearly going to be one of the biggest games of the year. And I think for us, like people who are used to it, like the amount of direction provided here is a lot more than what you can, you can usually get in a Souls game. But it's also like pretty open on like whatever the hell you want to do. And so I think for some people that means, I guess I'll just follow this grace, which means you're probably going to get to that first main boss way too fucking fast and not be prepared to it, because you basically get to the first major boss in, I don't know, 90 minutes if you wanted to, and not be at all ready for it. And so those notes are an interesting concession to give players things to do, but there is probably a more, I don't know, From Softwarean, like way to do it that is more like what they accomplished with the map. And I think this is a pretty, I don't know, it almost feels like in play testing, there was a note that said, players aren't discovering enough stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put in, these things that you can buy from the vendors.
Which is why I'm coming away from Elden Ring loving it, but being slightly critical, is because like, the potential is so clearly there. And like, I think it's very easy to like read me as being a lot more negative than most people, but like, I'm so fucking excited. I am so fucking excited for the next thing they do that is like refining on these schools of design, right? Like the fact that like they are currently working on a new Armored Core game that will probably have some Souls-like mechanics. That shit is extremely interesting to me, because you know what Armored Core is going to have that a Souls game does not have? Is intentional engagement with systems that aren't combat. You will have to be speccing out your mech, right? That is going to have to be a major point of like, a major system in the game will have to be speccing out your mech very intentionally and like treating a mech like a mech, right? And that shit is really exciting to me, especially after seeing what they can do when they're swinging.
What if you were Torrent? Is what you're saying? What if you were
Torrent and also you were slower? What if you were Torrent?
Wow, what if I attach these rocket boosters to my robot? Then I can be as fast as I want to be.
Exactly. And this is what I'm saying.
Don't slow me down, Ren.
Let me customize my horse. Let me put
slap some new legs on that baby.
Let me
attach a horse, to be fair.
Torrent.
Sure, you could change
a little
it.
could have gone a long way with Torrent, probably. Like
Yeah.
if just a tiny bit of customization and I don't know, but not speccing maybe, but like just anything to like make the player feel like it was theirs. I think could have gone a long way towards that lack that you're describing.
Speaking of alterations, for the Fashion Souls lovers out there, for those of you who love Fashion Souls and the depths of your heart and the core of your being, a thing I just stumbled upon in game that is extremely exciting to little Renata is there are altered versions of various clothing pieces that add and remove different aspects of the armor. It's exactly the same stat-wise, but like right now I'm wearing the Confessor's outfit, and like I can get it without the hood. I can get it without the cape. And you can alter those clothing items just enough that like the Fashion Souls potential feels like it is expanded exponentially by your ability.
It's actually them like tipping a hat to something that is a byproduct of their design, but is not something Like, I don't think Fashion Souls was something that, you know, they conceived of. It was more just people, that's what they did as with the game and the world and the art that they made. And so for them to acknowledge, hey, people would like to take this a little bit further, I think is exceptionally cool.
Yeah, there's seamsters. There are seamstresses in this game. There's like a little guy who'll be like, I'll be your seamster, and then you can customize clothing, and that is so cool. I love that.
Coming soon to Armored Core, colorways.
Oh my god. Get my anime livery for my giant mech.
Oh my god, Ren just zoomed the camera in on herself in a way we can activate the
Activation phrase
podcast.
has been spoken.
Yeah.
I'm also looking forward to it. It sounds like Ren, though, is also dangerously close to taking up Red Dead Redemption just to be a horse girl in Red Dead 2.
Because the horses do feel good in that game.
Fuck you. First of all, my first. I've got 3 points of response. First of all, fuck you. Point number 2. It would be a better horse. Point number 3. There is a thing in Red Dead that I know exists because I've been told about it that I wish to God was in Elden Ring, where apparently in Red Dead 2, you can sit at a fire and cut X's into your bullets to make them do just slightly more damage. And fucking hell do I wish there was shit like that in Elden Ring.
Wait, but you're already crafting your little arrows out of your thin bones.
I'm crafting my little arrows by pressing a button in a menu. I don't get to be like, okay, cool. I'm going to I want the animation. This is why I'm broken. I want just a little bit more. I want the feeling of being okay, I want it to be in a process. Right now I go kill the little guys and I hit the button in the menu. I just want one more step. Just let me press a button where it's
or what if you could queue up actions that were always meant to occur when you sit down at a bonfire? Look, the arrows are part of my build. I just want arrows to be built when I sit down at a bonfire and I'm interfacing the other menus, and you can just see your character doing that. I mean, you'll get the UI thing that's just we built you 20 arrows. You can leave right now, but you could sit and watch an idle animation while you're fucking with your stats.
Yes, and that's the shit that I really want. Is because right now my fundamental problem with shit like the Round Table Hold, which is the game's hub area, is that it doesn't provide a sense of place, or the sense of place is limited. There are moments of great placeness in Elden Ring, right? When I go to this Siofra River, that sense of placeness is incredible and powerful and immediate. When you're traveling through well-designed parts of Limgrave or Liurnia or Caelid, there is a sense of place there that is powerful and good. But I wish that feeling was more material and that the game felt more material. Because the Souls combat has always felt material. It's always felt animation driven. It feels like it's two bodies doing a thing. Which is why I want those bodies to do more than just hurt each other. I want to see them I want to see the intimacy of a Souls game in more than just a conversation with an NPC. That's really what I want.
You want more hugs? Want more NPCs?
I want more NPCs that cuddle. Because there is a cuddler
option with just one NPC, but
you can cuddle with her.
They do tell you come back as often as you'd like, and so you can cuddle as often as you would like.
Rob, you look so. I don't know how to describe the look on Rob's face when we said there was an NPC you could cuddle with.
It's one of the longest animations I have witnessed in a video game. The first time I enabled it, it's did I make a mistake? Did I not hit the? Oh no, we're getting ready for the cuddle. And then 30 to 45 seconds later, the cuddle is finished, and you have a temp buff that you can apply in your inventory.
The cuddle is long, right? The cuddle itself is long, but the important part to note is that the animation is not just the cuddle. It is your character as slowly as physically possible. The amount of muscle control it requires to bend down that slowly is astounding. If you were doing motions like that in a gym, people would be like, wow, look at her mobility. Oh my God. The glacial pace with which you bend down and let this woman cuddle you is fucking astounding. It is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I love it so much.
Was it motion captured or was it hand animated?
That shit is so hand animated because a human being cannot move that slowly. We don't have the technology.
Miyazaki got fed up. He was like, I keep asking people to kneel slower. And okay, fine. We're just going to get an animator on it.
Oh, it's so good.
All right, well, I think we'll leave the discussion off there. Cado, I noticed you were so silent during the conversation. You love Souls games. I'm just curious, like.
Wow, Cado's turning into an Elden Ring NPC as we speak.
Have you found my code? Ye tarnished.
Seek the Elden Code, ye tarnished.
Seek the Patrick email to the PR person.
God,
Seek the day one patch, ye tarnished.
Some people who may have worked with this website seem like they went to illicit New York City places in order to.
Are we back to Breaking Street?
Oh yeah,
They never stopped.
I love it.
The place. I know the place. I know where the place.
Yeah,
is.
I don't want to blow up their spot.
I'm not gonna blow up their spot,
Yeah,
but I know where the place is. I know they do not ever. They don't ever.
You got a place?
I'll tell you about it later.
Thank you, Cado. I'd like to know about this place. Listen, I'm a lifelong learner, and I'm always saying this.
You're gonna learn something new about a place in New York.
I love learning about places in New York.
All right. Well, we will pass that secret knowledge internally during the break, and when we get back, we'll talk about some other games folks have been playing and figuring out how Cado's been drowning in sorrows. So, Cado.
Are we in it now?
Yes. Oh yeah, we're good.
Hey, Cado, you want to take part in this podcast now?
Yeah, I would love to.
So, I was watching you and Natalie stream the other day.
Yeah.
And okay, I have to know what is the thing you didn't take up smoking halfling pipes, right?
It's just Pocky. I took a bite. I had some Pocky on my desk and decided to take a bite at the wrong time. Yeah, a little chocolate cracker thingy, you know.
Yeah. So I was watching you, Natalie, streaming Destiny the other day, and I was getting a pretty soulsy vibe from it, in terms of like the way that world looked.
Yeah.
You were using a bow and arrow.
Yes.
Everything was like red and gothic and like kind of fucked up, and I was like,
they're
that
basically
right there,
the same game.
That's a Souls game.
Yeah. Oh God. The Witch Queen dropped. The new DLC from Destiny 2, Witch Queen, dropped, and I've been having a real great time with it. Really enjoying the new space that they've created. Lots of great enemy and environmental design in this so far, and a lot of new mechanics that have been really interesting. One of the biggest ones feels like. Well, there's a couple of big ones. One of them is that they've added weapon crafting into the game, which has fully fucked me up because I didn't used to care about weapons that much. I would find a gun that felt good and then kind of not really do the whole thing of like repeated activities to hunt for a specific role on that gun. Usually if it was good enough, I'd roll with it, you know? But now they've added a new system where you can, through using certain guns that drop, that you can attune to, you get materials. And once you get those materials, you can start getting the frames for these weapons. You craft them and you pick out every perk that's on there. And then after you use that one that you've made once, you can reshape it. You can reforge it after you've like used it enough to level it up and change those perks again. You get enhanced perks as you go along. It it is how I'm going to start caring about trying to get a like quote unquote god roll. Like there's always like people math out the specific like these perks with this archetype is gonna be like the perfect thing, right? And before, the only way to attain that was run the activity where that specific thing drops until you get the right drop from it, right? It's all random chance, and it's almost never like you're only ever going to get that one gun from there anyway, so it's like a RNG on top of RNG. Do you get the gun, and is the gun's roll the one that you're looking for? Now, they've added this system where it's a long-term thing where you can build towards a specific weapon that you want, and I've been having a lot of fun with it in this, and I'm only like halfway through the campaign so far. Second big... Oh, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, like, first of all, like, are you gonna get like C&D'd by Suros or something like that? Like,
right.
I mean, this is a world with established gun manufacturers with like
There
established aesthetics.
And
does homebrew weaponry have like a kit like aesthetic that's different, or is it just like, oh, you just fabbed a Suros gun?
No, you fabbed the Suros gun. It even has the specific Suros perk on it. Like they've actually made a few changes where more of the guns have mostly been kind of aesthetically different and generally archetypically different between the like different gun manufacturers that exist in the world. This time there's like a set perk that you can see. Like this is the Suros perk. The Suros perk is if you reload, it's called compulsive reloader. If you reload when you're in the top half of the mag, you get a bonus to handling and damage, which is a thing that I love because that's me. I shoot 2 shots, reloader. I kill one person, reload immediately, and then kill the next. I forget what Omelon's is. Omelon's is something about reload speeds when you've emptied the mag, I believe. But they've taken those foundries which like existed since like Destiny 2 like started, and like really made like kind of more specific identities, weapon identities around them. And yeah, like when you're crafting those guns, you still are crafting that specific type of weapon. Like it's still a Suros gun. You're just like, yeah, it's like you downloaded the Suros blueprint and are 3D printing it yourself, which is great. But
there goes Destiny laying intellectual groundwork
yeah,
for the direction the world is going. So we're not selling you a thing we built. We are going to let you pay for us to like let you print out a kit at your house.
Did you hear that they broke street date on the new Suros weapon? Cado knows a place where you can break street date on the new Suros. Yeah,
immediately.
You wouldn't download a gun. Oh wait, you would.
No, fuck, they did. Oh no.
That's
where the revolution begins.
The second big mechanical introduction into this DLC is they've reworked Void. So back in was it over a year ago, 2020, when Beyond Light dropped, they introduced Stasis, the ice element, and that subclass had a new kind of format to it where you could pick different perks, and it was more mix and match builds where in Destiny 2 originally you had like a choice between 3 kind of packages of perks, but you couldn't choose between the individual perks for your subclass. Now they've extended that design to Void. They're going to move through the other subclasses going forward, but the new builds that they've made are really, really fun. They're really synergistic in ways that the old ones didn't feel often very synergistic, and it feels like I've made choices that have allowed for some ridiculous like grenade like I'm throwing grenades like crazy in a way that I didn't before, and that dovetails really nicely with the new campaign difficulty. Normally in these DLCs, campaigns are just like they are the power level that they are, and you either go in at level or under level, then that's how you're going to do it. This one, first, they raise the floor. Everyone's the same, that what was the old max last season, so everyone's starting from the same base point. But now they have a legendary version, which does two things. First, it adds a couple more modifiers to the enemy. So like things like match game, which is a nightfall modifier where you have to match exact element to exact element shields to do the most damage. Things like that make it a little more difficult to move through, and like those things are turned on. But it also caps your power level to 20 below whatever the enemies are, which essentially puts it at what is called contest mode for the raids. If you do a raid on day one, you're 20 below whatever the actual enemies are, which means things like red bar enemies, the kind of chaff of the enemy pool, in like the open world or in like normal contests where you're at the same level, usually take no more than 1 or 2 shots, and like they're not that intimidating. In this, like, it's gonna take 4 or 5, which in a action game, and like in a quick action game where a lot of these enemies are swarming you, really makes a huge difference. And this is where those builds where you can use your abilities a lot more often is really important, because those do much more damage than 1 or 2 gunshots. So it feels like the legendary mode is really kind of bringing out the need to kind of really consider how you're building out your grenade and melee cooldowns and what ability choices you're making for your subclasses. And that's been really, really fun. It feels like things that I used to only consider when I was day one raiding are now like, no, this is something that if you want to engage with something on this level, like if you want to go into legendary, it's here for you through the campaign all the way through, right? It was a sort of kind of challenge that only really existed in 1 or 2 places near the end game.
Ren.
Yeah,
I just had a question. Does that affect the drops you get?
it does. Yeah.
So does it make them? So I guess my question is: do you get better drops? One.
Yeah. You get better and more. You get more
better
drops. And more. So you're kind of leveling faster even.
Got it. I was going to say, is the light level on legendary drops, is that scaled to the cap, or is that scaled to your actual light level?
To your actual. So yeah, your drops don't get affected. Like the cap is just like what you're doing in damage incoming and outgoing. Mm-hmm. Like that's all that it's affecting. As far as your drops go, like you're getting drops the way that you would normally, as far as the light levels, like, and so you're, it's kind of, it is essentially made for people who are interested in raiding on day one, because you're gonna rip through those lower levels a lot faster and then start working on like past the powerful cap. The way that Destiny works is that there's different tiers of drops where the levels start getting harder and harder to build once you get higher. Mm-hmm. But you get a lot more of those, and you also get more of the upgrade material. So normally when you play a new Destiny thing, day one, you're getting blues that are 10 above whatever you're wearing. That's just how their systems work. Up to a certain level, blues and purples, rares and legendaries, all drop at plus 10 of whatever your current max light level is. And normally I would just run through the campaign by swapping onto whatever blues I'm getting, right? Until I hit the cap where blues stop growing light level and you have to focus on legendary drops only.
Right.
This time, because I'm doing legendary, because legendary is difficult and because legendary requires you to think about what your build is like a lot more than the regular campaign ever did. They're also giving the upgrade material that allows you to infuse that light level into your old stuff. So I'm carrying forward a lot of my armor and stuff just out of necessity. Like I need to have that armor because that armor has these specific mods that I've already put in that. Like the build is not just the subclass and the guns, but also like the perks that you're putting into your armor. So it feels like custom built. Like, yeah, you're getting more drops, you're leveling faster, and you're getting more of this upgrade material so that you can continue to build with legendaries instead of swapping through the blues that you're getting kind of to rush through the campaign.
So you're telling me that they added a mode to the video game that's like, do you want to be playing a better video game?
A bit, yeah. I mean, to be fair, like, I mean, it's a good option to have because some people don't care. They want to shoot the gun that feel good. And all the guns, even without building stuff, generally do feel good when you're at level with the enemies. It feels fucking great to shoot guns in Destiny. And I can understand absolutely a lot of people will engage with it that way. But if you're interested in engaging with the other abilities and stuff in a kind of more considered way, there's legendary mode for you. And that is for me. And a lot of people that are probably going to be raiding day one are doing that as well.
This sounds really good.
It's fun. It's really fun.
Cado, this sounds really good.
It's really neat, and like visually, I think they've always been very good at kind of environmental design, but there's some really stunning places and locations in this one. You're going into Savathun's throne world, and she's stolen the light, which is interesting. And like, I'll drop a small story spoiler here because I think it's particularly interesting. One of the things they never mentioned is how, and you think how is going to be a big deal. You learn after the first mission, she just convinced a bunch of ghosts. So the way the ghosts that leave the Traveler, they leave the Traveler and they're looking for their guardian, right? They're searching amongst the dead bodies to find the one person who is their guardian that they will resurrect to become the way that all guardians were resurrected. She got into a bunch of wandering ghosts and we're like, hey, actually, why don't you come over here and your guardians are Hive. I swear this is real. I swear this is the Traveler telling, not me, not Savathun. The Traveler's like, he wants you to resurrect. Your guardians are going to be Hive people. And a bunch of ghosts just were like, yeah, seems legit, and like went over and
So
defected.
Savathun convinced them or tricked them?
That's the part, that's the why we're not sure of. There is, however, one NPC that you meet that is flipping back the other way. He went over and is now an NPC that we talk to and are trying to, like, at least at first, I don't trust him. I think it's a double trick. I think he's tricking us again by being like, oh, I'm coming back. Yeah. But there's like so like, and that is fun. That is really fun because like, oftentimes, you know, there's a thing I've been harping on about Destiny since time immemorial. The sort of you know, stakes of who like who you're fighting against are always kind of like the zero sum game. Like, it's just always like, you're always the good guys, they're always the bad guys. There's no like question about motivations between people and stuff like that. It's just like, you're the light, they're the darkness, blah. And this one is not that. It is not that in a way that I'm more interested in the ways these NPCs are kind of maneuvering in this space than I ever have in Destiny, and that's fucking great. Yeah, I mean, I've just been enjoying it a whole lot. I'm not through the campaign yet because Legendary is pretty fucking difficult. If y'all watched us stream, I think we did the first 3 missions. I believe there's something like, I'm not actually sure. I'm not even going to say a number because I'm not sure how many there are ultimately. But I've also heard that even post-campaign, there's just a shit ton to do. So I will report back when I'm further in. But so far, a super strong first impression out of the Witch Queen for sure.
Can you replay those missions?
I think in theory, yes. I don't know how now. I think maybe once you finish them, they appear somewhere as a replayable. I've heard them. They have said if you go through once on normal, but want to do them on legendary after the fact, you will be able to do that. So currently my map is only populating with the new stuff.
Are they still doing that thing? Because this is how long it's been since I played it. The way you would access old content was like you would go to, I want to say like a vendor would be like, and here's some old missions that you can get. And it was kind of like, because they felt so pulled out of context that like the narrative flow, the story felt completely broken. Even setting aside the fact that like when you return to the hub areas now, it's always up to date for what the present is, the end of the campaign.
Right.
But like, is that still basically like how you access these things? Is you're like, where's the old playlist for the story?
No, they used to have a story playlist. Like literally, it was just like here's a random story mission, but they got rid of that. And right now, I'm not exactly sure how you get back to the old missions because I haven't gone through it once. I think you have to get through it all the way to the end to see. But they've said there's a way to go back to those, and I believe it's a way where you can just pick specific missions, and go through them, not like a random hopper, you know.
The reason I was curious is because I've never really meshed with the activities in Destiny, like going to a place and they seem kind of bad. And if I could like play Destiny in a way that let me like level by just like playing missions that were like intentionally designed and feel good,
yes,
that would be of interest to little old Renata.
Yeah, I'll check back in to see how far I get. Here's the thing. There are locks at a certain point where, like I'm saying right now, blues are still useful for leveling up. But at a certain point that stops, and I don't know once that is how hard the breaks are on those campaign missions. At least at first though, it does feel like you're gonna be sailing through a bunch of levels just by playing the campaign, especially if you're playing on legendary. I think even if there's a certain point after which you don't even, if you're never gonna play the sort of repeatable content that comes back every week, the strikes and stuff, you can also just stop playing the game at that point. But from what I've heard is like there's still a lot of campaign and stuff to do if you don't want to do the repeatable thing, you know?
I've always liked strikes. It's just it's like the rote activities, the shit where it's like, go to this point on the map and fight these like 15 dudes with like 6 of your best friends who you just met, and one of their names is a slur.
Missions. I haven't done a patrol mission in like years, I think.
Oh, thank God. Because like that was my least favorite part about Destiny.
There are moments where they're like, yeah, go do like 2 patrols. And it's like, fine. But like, it's not a regular part of the like, of the kind of weekly structure even. The weekly repeatable missions are all much more designed experiences. And even the one for this first week was even by those standards a little more involved mechanically than they normally are, so that was neat. It's I feel like I say this every fucking time, but it's the best Destiny has been. I think the difference here is that I feel like I could, barring the issues of like you're just jumping into the deep end as far as story goes, the way that it's structured feels more like a regular video game where like if someone were to open the game and just go through the story, you wouldn't be completely lost, where I feel like other expansions haven't done that very well. People can get lost very easily amongst the like lists of different activities and different playlists and all that. Witch Queen focuses down on the campaign. It lets you pick your difficulty and level of engagement that you want out of the campaign, and that has been very, very good. I would say people new to Destiny could play this. Huh?
Like you got to get on the treadmill at some point. It's like you have.
There will be a point after the campaign where you've hit the end of content that is like.
I guess what I mean is like Destiny, like as a product, is just disinterested in onboarding. Like with people, like as an outsider, people. I think of this sometimes, like idly, like, I look at all my friends, like, I've liked Destiny a couple of times over the years. Like, I'd love to see this stuff too.
This is a good one to do.
Yeah, and I still might download and play the campaign, right? But it is the sort of thing where I don't know that there's like, it's good that this is a good entry, but at some point, there's not a great entry because Destiny 2 is just like, we're just moving. Sorry, like you can get on, go watch some lore videos, catch up. You can't play that old content. Did you buy it? Well, you can't play it anymore. No, it's vaulted. But we're just going to keep moving forward because that's just how the game works now.
Yeah, I went back and reread the article where they explained vaulting again, and it really, I have no choice but to believe them that they said it's for stability reasons, it's for optimization reasons, that they can't just continue to add things to the game without taking out the old things. Hearing what the old dev tools were like, I believe that they got into some fucked up mess where it would be too much work to undo it completely and allow them to keep
It's the
those
lack
things.
of a plan, though, right? I think where I deeply sympathize, other than just it sucks to pay for a thing and be told,
Yeah.
no, you just
Horrible.
can't. You just can't.
Horrible.
That's really bad. Like profound. Like running service games is different. I get it, but I think it's the lack of like.
But like,
here is what's going to happen with this content, because maybe they're still figuring that out.
Sure.
But it's the lack of this is a several year plan.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where we plan to go with this stuff, because it feels a little bit like we're vaulting it so we can retool it and make it cooler. So then when it comes back, it's like a big fucking deal and you're excited. But that is there's reasonable cynicism in something like that.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like they've leaned so hard into this weekly structure where things kind of change week to week if you're keeping up with it and you're returning to it. That at a certain point, I understand how that sort of stuff doesn't continue to exist through time, but I'm the other MMO that I'm still very, very slowly making my way through, Final Fantasy XIV. I can still play that whole game from the beginning to this day. Of course, that game they're both about the same size in gigabytes, which I think is telling because Destiny has already removed 3 years of its content and it's still the same amount of space in gigabytes. So there might be something to the optimization and management thing that they were talking about it when they originally explained vaulting. But yeah, it sucks, and I wish there were a better way.
Vaulting just has like such a specific. If you've been, depending on how old you are, like when I think of vaulting, I think of Disney.
The Disney Vault.
The Disney Vault, the one thing that exists.
Concept.
Yes, it is. Yes. It is artificial scarcity for the explicit purpose of.
They should not have ever said the words Destiny content vault, but they did. It was a mistake.
No. They did.
And because
they vaulted guns before, right? Like previously, they vaulted weapons. Yes.
Yeah, before that went poorly, and they walked that back. Well, here's the thing: there were a couple guns that were too strong, and then as soon as those rotated out, they're like, "Oh, okay, people didn't like sunsetting, so we'll stop doing that." So those guns are still there. You can still use them. You just can't use them for like the newest raid because they will be too underpowered to use. You could use them in PvP where power level doesn't matter, but apart from that, yeah, they were not upgradable after a certain point. But yeah.
But
Destiny.
for those who are surfing the leading edge of Destiny, better than it's ever been.
Better than it's ever been. And like the best, a more welcoming onboarding place for people who are curious about it. Like this campaign is really neat and really really well focused.
Cado, do you think you can evaluate that?
No. I want to try. Look, no, because I have the other ones. I have the other things that existed to compare against, right? And like, they've just made some of it is just UI changes, but some of it is also just kind of narrative through line that makes it kind of clear what your next step is all the time, and it doesn't try to pull you out.
I don't even talk about the onboard. Like, we'll have to release Patrick into Destiny, like one of those, like build like one of those little cat mazes that people build.
Yeah,
and like see what Patrick does.
What do you do? Can you find the cheese?
Just sort of film Patrick. Like, all right, you haven't played Destiny in ages. What happens now?
Actually, I would be really curious.
I haven't touched it since the Taken King, and like thoroughly enjoyed the Taken King.
Got taken.
This motherfucker don't even know about the Red War.
Wow.
Wasn't the Red War? Was the Red War before?
That was base Destiny 2.
Yeah, I played that.
Okay.
Yeah, because the Taken King
anything about
anything
about the Red War, he can tell you.
Okay, so I'm getting all my Destinies mixed up. This tells you.
Yeah.
I come in every time there's. What I want is I just want Bungie to make another like spectacle campaign shooter, and like they don't. But every time there's a new expansion, I'm like, well, maybe this one will have a little bit.
I think this one gets there. I think this one is like the missions in this one are like spectacle and like encounter design wise closer to that thing.
The Bloodborne influence.
Are closer to that sort of I don't know, like
I believe you guys also have
to-
zero personal
Yeah.
attachment to like the setting, lore.
yeah.
You know, Witch Queen sounds cool. I know people have said like, oh, it's got like kind of an eldritch, horror vibe. But if I like don't give a shit about like the monologues coming out
curious.
of the characters, like I'll download it. Like, like I
want to know.
It's not gonna be a big deal to check it out. But yeah, I'm just curious how I would respond to
Fuck, is that a stream idea? Patrick and I play Destiny.
Yeah, and I will silently produce and not say a word.
And if we're added difficulty, do we start on different platforms?
That's nothing. That's easy.
Okay.
Yeah, their crossplay is actually, it just fucking works. I don't understand.
Last time I interacted with the system, Cado, it
Yeah.
was like, so it sort of works. Like, you can unify your account. You can't play it on every platform, of course, unless you want to buy it in 3 places.
Oh, you mean
But-
like having an account across multiple? That part is still, yeah, you have to rebuy the DLC if you move from one place to another.
Yes.
That sucks. But playing with other
it's
people.
all on.
What's that?
I can do PC's fine. We can do PC.
Yeah.
Right? Aren't you playing on PC?
All my
It's
shit
all on
was-
Steam.
All my stuff was bought in on PlayStation 4.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Well, you have
And
that
so this
account.
was the
there.
other thing is like, yeah.
Rob.
You'll have all your stuff. Not that
You
stuff
just- I can-
matters.
I
But
can-
PS4.
Wait.
What was the last time you played?
Email.
Wait.
No. I don't want the code. I can get like what amuses me is the notion that like Cado's saying this is easy. Like how I can just pick up my old account, I'll just buy the game, get it all working. I'm actually really curious if even that part is as easy as Cado's making it out to be. Or if it's like, fuck, I shouldn't be locked out of one of my Destiny accounts. What the fuck is the password to?
Oh, you were trying to merge accounts across platforms. You were
Yes.
trying to do the cross save thing. That part is yeah.
Fuck, great, awesome, love to hear that.
But
Love
it's
to hear it.
doable. You
Love
just have
hear
to
I'm
make
fucked
sure.
forever because I fired up an Xbox One version for like 30 minutes.
You don't. Well, you
I
could
mean,
just
at
ignore
this
it.
point, couldn't you
ignore
just
it.
start a fresh character? Like, who cares?
Yeah.
Like, do you
Yeah, I
have
mean, it's
attachments
just in all
to
my
your-
saves now, Cade is still alive.
He doesn't
where my
exist.
character
He's not in the
is,
game.
Cade,
They
Cade's-
vaulted Cade.
Why they got to do that?
They
Well,
couldn't pay
anyway.
Nathan Fillion.
That's true. That's all going to change once the Sony bucks show up.
Oh my god.
Sony's going to be like, you got to bring back all the expensive voice actors. People love them.
God.
All right, so I've been playing something too.
What's
We
that,
have
Rob?
promised a year of motorsport,
Uh-huh.
and the year of motorsport continues apace. I got access to a new racing game this week. It's real exciting. And I've been having sort of an unconventional path through it so far. Talking, of course, about Grid Legends, the new racing game from Codemasters, which is, well, it's a great question. If you're like, hey, Rob, what's Grid?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Well, I remember it's a 4-player midway arcade game. It had it was green themed. It was like a third person action game. It was trying to do kind of like a Quake thing, but like, what if we did it in the arcade?
this kind of reinvented that. It took that IP, and years ago, it turned it into a racing game. And Grid is one of the most like it's a series that kind of baffles me because you have to understand Grid 1 was like Codemasters like sort of retiring the Toka series. If you remember the Toka Race Driver series, which also had like weird narrative beats with like plasticky
Yes.
drivers in the Uncanny Valley. Grid kind of went in that direction. Grid sort of supplanted that with a not quite, it was like semi-realistic racing game that took place in like a world where all racing is unified and you're just racing across like every racing discipline. And that first game was really good. They had some really cool modes in that, but I think the big thing they added was they also had Circuit de Sarthe, which is where they run the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And that was really cool. And then every single successive time, they just would change what grid was, like just completely flip the table. So like the next time around, it was even more arcadey, but now their entire, like, I want to say Grid 2 was entirely like the most, the kids are into social media now. So the overarching like structure of Grid 2 is like, hey man, you're trying to make it on social media as like the world's most influential racing star in the world. And so progress can be measured through like how many likes are your clips getting as you run these really conventional, boring ass races again and again, with like slightly less engaging like physics and handling models. They started reinventing the series like literally a couple years ago. I think they just called it Grid again and just ignored all the previous games.
Do we add periods this time so that it could be like serious, like GRID?
No, I think they've been pretty committed to all caps. No
Okay,
periods.
all right.
Right.
But it is like Grid. That's kind of how.
You gotta say it with your heart, not even your chest. Don't say it with your chest. That's what a little bitch does. Say it with your heart.
So now
Grid.
Now we have Grid Legends. And Grid Legends, I believe toward the end of last year, I was like, you know what we need? More story modes in racing games. So here's Grid Legends. It's an FMV game. Like that's all like that's all
Excuse
I can
Looking up this trailer right now.
So Grid Legends looked at the series, like looked at the success of shit like Drive to Survive on Netflix and was like, people love the racing documentaries. So now the structure
You're not kidding.
I'm not kidding.
You are not. This is a lot of cameras of real people doing shit. Okay. All right. Continue.
Yes. And so the structure of this one is before you get into your main campaign, which is kind of like open-ended progression through various like disciplines and difficulty levels of the Grid World Series. First, you run like a tutorial campaign that's all narrative driven, about being the young rookie driver at Seneca Racing. And the way this is presented is through a fictional documentary being made about this fictional racing team that races in the Grid series, which is, of course, the biggest series in the world because unlike every other racing series, they race all cars. That's what makes Grid so cool, is that, like, you know, in NASCAR, they race NASCARs, but in Grid series, you might be racing NASCARs one day and, like, hot hatchbacks the next, and then super trucks, and then, like Formula E electric race cars. You could be doing all that in the Grid series, and that's what makes it compelling. And you're joining this, Seneca racing team, which is basically, it's the most, like, what's the way to put it? Like, almost, it's not as cynical as Bad News Bears, but I think Ted Lasso is probably the wrong comparison to draw. Basically, you are working for the team owner with a heart. The guy who runs Seneca Racing is just, he even explains, like, the opening of the campaign is like, so Seneca Racing has sucked ass for years. Like, they're just terrible. And the guy's like, you know what I do? How I evaluate talent? I don't look at on-track performance. I look at what's in here. What's in a driver's heart.
Like I said, say Grid with your heart, not your chest.
The problem is your driver is not a character in the story. This is the decision they have made, which is that all the other characters around Seneca and its rival teams, they are characters with actors and they appear in the cutscenes. All of this is happening around you, the player character. Number 22. Seneca 22. Your number. And that way you are not a character, that you're not a person. There's not, everyone talks about you, but you never appear in the story, which makes the story like way less interesting. The comparison I would make is when they did a story mode for Formula One last year, it was about two like specific characters in that world. And there was no illusion that like you were one of them. No, like you played through the eyes of these characters, but like they were people who existed in these cutscenes and did their own thing. Here, it's like everyone's talking about, like, whenever 22 is not on the screen, people should be talking about what 22 is doing. That is the story. That is how this goes about it. Is everyone's like, man, what do you think of 22? I don't know. I'm pretty unpersuaded. I don't know what we're thinking hiring this guy. Yeah, I don't know. And then, like, by the way, also, nothing is affected by your performance on track. I fucked up. I started like medium difficulty. This game seems to be really flattering is the way I would put it in terms of how difficulty works. Because like medium, first time out on the track, I'm winning races, 2-lap races by like 25 seconds. That's not supposed to happen in a racing game. Yeah. So I crank it to hard, and now I'm winning them by 15 seconds. And so I'm like, but the thing is, so like right from the first, every race I'm just like breezing to a win, but because they only shot like because it's a like really rigid structure of chapters and there's no like
please click on the Cado, have you clicked on the clip that I made? I didn't know you.
Do we need to stop and like watch this real quick?
Just watch this little bit. Just watch this 5 seconds. Like there's 5 seconds, and I think we'll give you a I saw Ren cackling when I pasted it. If you just click play at the bottom there, you'll get a taste of this one player bumping into the other player. And like, what's the deal, man? What the fuck?
What's going on?
Which gives me a strong makes me want to watch you play this game, Rob. I'll say, which is not what I normally say about a racing game.
I think. Cado, please.
I was just gonna ask: Do people ever turn to the camera and like address
because
you?
This is a documentary. Oh no. So Toka would do that. The Toka games were all about like you are a floating head, the camera is your perspective, and people are like. And I think I got memory might fail me here. I want to say the Toka series might have had a love interest. I want to say,
oh my god,
like. I want to say like one of the characters in your orbit like wanted to get with you in a way that was like uncanny in every respect.
Yeah.
But yeah. So no, because it's a documentary, like characters are constantly like talking. It's all done through like fake interviews.
Right. Okay.
But the thing is, I'm here for anyone trying to make an FMV game. Sorry. I'm here for anyone trying to make an FMV game, but not so concerned with quality as like Sam Barlow is about like whether that FMV is great.
Sure.
I like somebody who's like, I will embrace the aesthetics and spirit of 90s FMV.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening here.
But also like, that's why I asked that specific question, because I feel like a lot of the times that was the take on early, like the ones that I've seen, and specifically the one I'm thinking of that is from my childhood is Dune 2000, where you are the commander, and they're whenever the FMV comes up, they're speaking to the camera, which is to you.
Yeah, I mean, Westwood like basically pioneered that as like a shtick for all their, through the Command and Conquer era.
That's what FMV means to me, not just video, live action video, but like that sort of. Kind of milieu, I guess.
that very classic. The one place that capitalism can't reach us, space. That shit.
I do love that.
So
shout out Tim Curry. Maybe does he suck? Do we know?
No, I don't think so.
I think so. So as of this recording, I think we're cool.
Congratulations, Tim Curry, for dodging the woke cancel mob. Tim Curry dodging fucking bullets like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix. Racism, sexism, homophobia, none of it can hit him.
Treating people with respect.
So, and that maybe that's the other thing is, all the actors, all the like the writing and performances in this are all like fine, but there is a quality to all of it that is a little bit like amateurish in ways that again are like kind of charming. Like the fact, for instance, they were like, okay, so this is a fake documentary. How do we convince people it's a real documentary? Well, we're going to move the camera a lot. Everything's going to be shaky cam. And we're going to be pulling focus a lot of times, even in the segments where it's like an interview segment. And like it would be a camera on a tripod and like somebody carefully lit. No, we're still like pulling and like adjusting focus and like making random cuts to different angles.
Doing the Battlestar Galactica crash cam on someone's face.
Yeah.
It's like you have a 13-year-old who's behind the camera, which, oh my God, speaking of 13-year-olds behind the camera. Oh.
It is but then on the other hand, like, so when you reach the Grid World series, in addition to, there's the guy, Patrick, you don't see him in the clip that Patrick got, but this dude, like, Nate McCain, who is the douchebag fuckboy, like, rock star of the Grid World series.
Great.
Son of John McCain.
Clearly not if you saw him. He is way too scuzzy in a way. Not that, like, obviously there's different like, the thing is, I wouldn't say Meghan McCain is scuzzy. I would say there's other negative things I associate with Meghan McCain. But, like, Nate McCain as a character has the most, like, guy who deals drugs at the beach, but during the racing season races cars type of thing.
No, this is ideal.
Yeah. Like, he is, so that's your kind of villain of the story. But even better than that is the team he races for, like Ravenscraft. I have no idea. Ravenswood, no, something Ravens. Anyway, they're evil. But and I mean that, like, if you see the movie Twister, remember, like, there's the good storm chasers and the evil ones. It's the same vibe. Like, how do we know they're evil? There's stuff like black and glossy. There's a lot of piano black and like chrome. Yes. Ren found him.
Nathan McCain. Oh my God.
Looks like a Nathan McCain.
That guy has had so many pretrial diversions.
This guy is. If this dude cleaned up like 10%, he would be dating every single bi woman in Brooklyn simultaneously. Every single bisexual woman in Brooklyn just ruined by this one dude the second he puts a beanie on, and everyone's mad about it, and everyone's pissed. Other straight men are pissed. Lesbians are pissed. The friends of all of these bi women are pissed. This dude looks like a fucking menace. Oh my God.
But he can play like this one song pretty good on his guitar. Like, he can't do much else, but like this one song.
But he's also
been
part
working
of your
on it
local
during
DSA.
COVID.
He is part of your local DSA. And he is the worst. I fucking hate this guy. When I was getting COVID tested, there were two dudes in the COVID testing line just discoursing about the local Brooklyn DSA in front of me. And that was one of the funniest fucking conversations I've ever been at. It sounded like an episode of Chapo Trap House was happening to me. It was awful. I was like, damn, where's y'all's Patreon?
This is why I don't go outside.
So, but then his team owner, the guy who like runs, so like if Seneca Racing is good, the people who run Raven are bad, and his team owner is also just the, like, how do we know he's bad? He's gonna be the oiliest motherfucker that you've ever seen, and in every cutscene he will ignore whoever he's talking to look at his phone. And also he wears, like, I want to say, like, white linen suits with like pastels. So, like, again, really like
Lex Luthor vibes.
Yeah. But again, like, I cannot emphasize enough the oiliness factor.
Can you give me a name? Do you remember his name?
I can't. I think it might be McCain, because I think he's like the uncle of Nathan McCain.
So it's Raven.
Wait. Hold on.
I've got this. I've got the information that we're looking for. Give me a second. Because
I just found I'm on YouTube and I found the final cutscene. I don't want to look at it because I want to know how the story ends. I have a feeling we're going to win the big game through the power of friendship.
All right. Oh God, I'm so excited. Grid Legends. Click. Story. Click. God damn it.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to find. It's going to be hard to find. But so the other thing is like, you got your team, you got your engineer, who's your classic like nerd who's really awkward, but a genius with a car. He fixes it. He makes anything, faster that he touches. You've got your teammate Yume, who's a really like no nonsense, like butch Japanese racer, who is just like pretty skeptical of you at first, but like once you best her in a race. That I think the mission objective for that chapter is best Yume in a race on big old impact font every time you race. Like Yume's like, I wasn't sure about you 22, but I think you and I are gonna do great things here together at Seneca.
God, it's so funny to me that they stuck with 22 instead of giving you a character name, because like, if you're just gonna have people say a name anyways, just pick one. Just pick one. Pick a name, damn it.
Yeah, like it. Wait.
Is that him in the background?
Yeah, the background dude, yes.
Oh my
but he's less oily there.
He's still pretty oily.
No, that you don't even know how oily he can get. Like that's him. Like he's showered and degreased for this one. But no, I mean, like more seriously though,
hair
it is
instantly slicks back the moments he gets out of the shower. Doesn't have to wash off the grease. It just.
But I think it is like kind of an avoidance of like having anything specific about your character and any traits. I think that's the mistake, right? Like, because when you have a story with like a hole at the center, which is like who is the person who's changing the fortunes of this team, the story's going to be less interesting.
Right.
You're not going to like. It's so clear. It's sort of talking around you.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like again in the F1 game. Because they have two specific characters that you take their perspective, like they're actually pretty sharply drawn and like have their own insecurities and vulnerabilities in a way that made that really compelling. And Grid Legends can't get there. Now, also Grid Legends is happy to be more ridiculous. And the way that, okay, my last thing. By the way, the driving is fine. It's fine. It's really arcadey. Like your cars have no sense of weight or inertia at all. It's like you're driving a pair of roller skates.
30 minutes later, how's the race?
It sounds like you're driving fucking Torrent.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, so you're just like whipping, like
that
just
horse.
no sense of physical mass to the cars. But last thing I'll say about this game is I feel like, so they're shooting on really like inexpensive sets. They're doing a lot of like composite background, stuff where it's like you will clearly see a handful like real tires in the foreground of a shot, and then the background like there's a very like bad projection of a pit lane. But one, they don't like very convincingly light a lot of the sets, which isn't such a big deal. But there's one moment where I was like, are they dealing with like guild rules or something here and trying to work around them? There's a moment where Nate McCain and his teammate are walking down the pit grid, the pit lane. They're being greeted by fans and everything. And you realize you can't hear the fans. It's like, how when you see like behind the scenes shots of like scenes that are shot in like a loud nightclub, but it's all dead silent and people are just like bouncing randomly to a beat that isn't there, or like talking really animatedly as if they're shouting to be heard, but it's like dead silent. This is just that. Yeah. And so there will be moments where like the characters will talk to these like fans coming up to ask for interviews, but all you will hear on the soundtrack for like the ambient noise is like something like meh, meh. That's what it sounds like. And they're like, oh, of course. Yeah, I'll take a selfie with you. I hate these fans always like begging for their selfies. All right. Yeah, I'll see you later. Fuck these people. And
Like a mewling cat.
it's so weird. But I'm like, is that because if that person delivered a line, their rate would change? Like I was sitting there. I was like, is the reason we can't hear these people at all that like they can have people like moving around doing nothing in the background, but like if anybody says anything, there's something else and it's more expensive? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's so weird because it's
Yeah.
like you clearly hired like 30 extras for this scene,
Right.
but nobody makes a noise. And so like it's really weird to like have these two characters that are walking across the soundstage. I guess I would say, well, how much is this game? How much is Grid Legends?
I mean, it's
Grod-
probably
not Grod Legends,
$60,
Rob.
right?
Rob's acting doing this is what consumer journalism looks like. He's doing it right now.
I'm just like, what would I do? What? Well, it's $60, and what can I say? Like,
Hey, hold on. Try it now with EA Play. Join now for instant access to 10 hours of playtime in Grid Legends. So you could get
10 hours?
That's probably the whole campaign.
That is
You can-
true.
You
That
can
is true.
probably. Oh, Patrick just died.
Where'd he
Goodbye,
go?
Patrick.
Goodbye, Patrick.
I don't know.
Hello,
Dis-
Patrick.
Bye, Patrick. We'll miss you.
Discord crashed.
But yeah, like I find this game like I'm playing around with it because I gotta get out of this opening campaign, maybe see what the main game is like. But the campaign is charming. I'm not gonna like pretend that I'm not a little bit charmed, but I wish the racing were maybe a lot better than it is. I feel like it has ended up in really weightless territory.
Rob, you said
Yeah.
was arcadey, as in not fully arcade-ish, but I saw a speed boost in one of these trailers.
Well, yeah, but hold on. Formula E racing has speed boosts.
What? Really?
Yeah. No, this is you go through like the way they're presented on the broadcast is like an AR gate.
Yeah.
Or like an AR like zone, and you go through it. You activate a speed boost, and they let you discharge extra energy for that lap.
What?
So yeah, that's
They put
no, it's super like
speed boost in real life.
electric car racing is weird. And they try a lot of things. They also have fan boost, where like fans vote on like who they like and give that person a speed bonus.
I was hoping we were talking about like, you know, those things that you go around in the bayou with. I was like, I thought this was just a giant fan on the back of these cars, just
Fan
pushing them a
boost.
little extra faster.
Just imagine like that. We stole the emotion technology from the Monsters Inc. fuckers, and now we can channel human emotion into power. And so when your fans cheer, much like a screaming child in the film Monsters Inc., you can just incredible. I love science.
God.
This is why we need entrepreneurs.
Also, I mean, Cado, like it could be later in the game that you get nitrous boosts. Again,
Sure.
what makes Grid so special is they race every discipline,
Right.
including nitrous powered tuners. I think maybe.
Maybe. Who can say?
I will say, I don't know if it's in this game. One of the best modes I've ever seen in a racing game was in Grid 1, Toge racing. It is point-to-point racing. Like, I think the discipline originates in Japan, but it's like point-to-point racing along like country roads. But here's the key. If the cars touch at all, it's over. Like, if you like trade even the slightest whisper of paint, race is over, you have lost. So you have to like manage overtakes in these really like tense, like closely matched encounters without touching the other driver. And that was such a change in a racing game that was like, it was fascinating. And like, stays with me to this day. I long to be a Toge driver again. But
So you're saying my aggressive drivatar style would not pass muster in
not in Grid 1, but I will say it is an asset. Oh, sorry. There's also a nemesis system where, like, if you bash somebody, but it's not real. Like, if you bash somebody out of the way early in the race, it's like, oh, they're not going to like that. And it's like, this person's now your nemesis. And the AI driver will start driving real angry. But if you pass them and leave them behind, it doesn't matter. But like
Sure.
if you can't, then they'll come up and just try to like knock you into the wall or knock you out
Damn.
of the race. And that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I was kind of hoping, and maybe in the campaign there will be this, where like maybe nemesis persist between games. That would be cool. But at the moment, all it is like you smack into somebody early in the race, and now they just hate your guts for the rest of the race. But I'm like, bye.
I'm really excited for when you smack into a guy and then they actually develop an immunity to smacking, where they're like, I beat you last time after you smacked me, and now you can never smack me again. My car has a repulsive shield on it.
Bigger bumper, just like increasingly like
Yeah.
armored against you.
You can also kind of take control of other drivers, which is pretty uncomfortable for everyone involved and says a lot of odd things about the video game and kind of how it's, constructing an idea of politics and selfhood and who gets to be a person. And that's really weird for everyone. I love Grid Motorsports.
It's yeah. So look, if you will stand up for the spirit of FMV games, it is alive and well in Grid Legends.
And Rob, can I hear that name with your heart?
Grid Legends.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's what I
You need
needed.
to, you gotta send Vinny a message, Rob. Let him know there's something to add to his docket. I'm not sure Grid Legends would have been on his FMV list, but you might need to tell him that Nextlander's got to add that to their streaming list.
Yeah, but it's so rote. Like it doesn't have nowhere near the freedom of expression that Ripper gives you, but does have some of the same vibe of like, wow, they really cut a lot of corners here in ways that are beautiful. And so I'm all for it. All right, I think that's a wrap on today's episode of Waypoint Radio. If you
Well, yeah, I guess I didn't play the Steam Deck for 2 weeks, but that's fine. We can save for next week.
Patrick, we're at 2 hours.
It's 2 hours and
I
20 minutes.
didn't expect 35 minutes on Grid Legends.
It was a good 35 minutes.
Yeah, it was.
Well, maybe if it was an FMV game machine, Patrick, it would have been more interesting to us.
Can you play Grid Legends on the Steam Deck?
It sounds like
Probably.
it's suited to be an FMV. Oh my God! Shut
Play
the
anything on it.
fuck
No,
up.
I have a big piece going up on it when this goes out. We'll just connect that in the before Waypoints next week. We'll just have a gaming. The short version is it's a cool device that is really just a computer that you can brick if you want and do whatever you want with it, and it just happens to have a fancy UI on it and has a very loud fan, and it runs Resident Evil 7 Village really well.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, at like 60 frames a second. It's a wild device. I like it quite a bit. You probably actually want to wait for the version 2 of it, but it's in terms of replacing a Switch with something that will just run games better. It's really neat. But we can unpack that next week. But there's a big piece that'll get into all of that on the site right now.
Also, when's that thing that I'm secretly buying? For
You're in Q2, Rob.
Okay.
Is what my Steam
like
Deck
Q2
launch day.
fiscally or like
I don't know, dude. The Steam Deck launch day is technically the embargo date, which is like the day that this podcast comes out. But Steam Deck launch day is just emails going out to people to let them process their payment to then get a deck shipped to you. I think they're having a lot of hardware allocation issues, which is not super shocking. So a Q2 could mean, I think you're looking at summer, probably.
all right. Well, I guess it's not reasonable to wait for me to get mine for us to have the big discussion about the Steam Deck.
Oh,
Well-
We had the conversation 6 months late.
We'll talk more about the Steam Deck soon. I'm sorry, Patrick. I guess that was more important than Grid Legends, if I'm being honest. If I'm being honest, it's possible I misallocated our resources on this show.
But that's what people love about us, right? Like that's the Waypoint promise is that we will it be in the direction we should be looking? No. Will we be looking in a direction for 30 minutes? Yes.
And if you want to help us look in the wrong direction, you can support us at waypointplus.com. We've been streaming a whole bunch lately. Ren and I are continuing to beat up on dissenting nobles in Warhammer. Also, we managed to take an L on a fight the game said was going to be like laughably easy, and like we ended up losing an entire army to rat people.
It takes zero responsibility.
It's fucked. It's fucked up. Like it was one of the worst things ever happened to me on stream.
Damn.
Don't watch that video. Cado, edit the part out where we eat shit.
We had a better battle later. We had like one of our better battles later in that episode. Like we turned another L into an incredible victory.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. We were booked to lose, and then we did it again. But yeah. Waypointplus.com. There's been some Elden Ring streaming. I'm not sure if, like, maybe we'll do more tomorrow, or maybe we'll do Fireteam. Who can say?
Yeah, we haven't figured that part yet.
If you're listening, something's going on right now as you're listening. If you downloaded it immediately, do this shtick again.
If you listened next week, there is, statistically speaking, probably something happening on our Twitch channel right now.
That's true too. We're doing
and
lots.
Of course, we're all on Twitter. And then there's the Facebook and YouTube channel at Waypoint
We're on the
Vice.
Bird Hell site.
Yeah, absolutely. But most importantly, you can go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. And that gives you access to our premium feed, but that also helps you support Waypoint and all the mistakes we make here. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. For now, we're saying we don't have time to discuss the Steam Deck. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, fuck capitalism. Go home.